Hey guys, it's Etor. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to ask you something. What's your story? We all have one, and sometimes it takes the right space and a little guidance to bring that story to life. That's why I created the Ink and Authenticity Men's Creative Writing Workshop. It's a unique space for men to explore their identities, reflect on personal experiences, and use writing as a tool for self-discovery. Whether you're an experienced writer or have never written a word, this workshop is for you. Join me and other like-minded men on this journey. Visit authenticityroad.online/workshop to learn more. Thanks. And now on to today's episode. What do you think of the idea that love, real, lasting love, isn't something that just happens to us, but is something we can actually learn and cultivate? Imagine the impact that could have on every relationship in your life. Today, we're embarking on a journey to explore one of the most profound mysteries of human existence. How do we build relationships that not only survive, but thrive over time? Whether it's the bond with a partner, the trust shared with a friend, or the respect fostered with a colleague, these connections form the bedrock of our lives. My guest today, Dr. Mark Hicks, believes that love is more than a feeling. It's a skill that can be learned, practiced, and perfected. He's here to share the 5 essential components of love that can transform the way we engage with the people who matter most to us. So, if you've ever felt that your relationships could be more meaningful, more resilient, or more joyful, this episode is for you. We're going to break down the tools you need to not just find love, but to nurture it, sustain it, and make it last. So let's get on the road. Welcome to the Authenticity Road podcast.
We started this podcast to share our stories and hear from others about their adventures in men's work.
Join us on the journey to our fully authentic selves, emotional healing, and the meaning of modern masculinity.
Here on Authenticity Road.
Hello, and welcome to the Authenticity Road podcast. I am Etor, and this week on the podcast, I am thrilled to welcome author, speaker, and relationship coach Dr. Mark Hicks to the show. Mark holds a master's degree in mental health counseling, a master's of divinity, a doctor of ministry, and a strong belief that through the 5 components of love, lives can be transformed, relationships developed, and everyone can live a life that matters with healthy relationships that last. Most recently, Mark is the author of Learning Love, Building a Life That Matters and Healthy Relationships That Last. Mark, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Is there anything that you would add to that little bio up front that you think people ought to know about you before we get started today?
That's most of it. The only other thing I suppose I am involved in a major way is I also do some ghostwriting. In addition to writing my own things, I do some ghostwriting. So if you would like to have me as a speaker, or like to have me as a relationship coach, or if you would like me to help you write your own book, I can do all of those things.
Well, let me jot this down because I could use some help with that. I also note from your bio that you enjoy being a house sitter and a pet sitter, and yeah. I'm always in the market for that. So if you ever want to come to the Berkshire Mountains of Western Massachusetts, you just let me know.
Oh, sounds great. Yeah, my wife works online. I'm a full-time writer, basically, between my ghostwriting and writing my own books. And she works a remote job, and so we can be anywhere. Our boys are grown and off on their own, so we just hit the road. And I always say that I write my books and I write other people's books in other people's houses.
But home for you is usually Tennessee, right?
Knoxville, Tennessee is my home. Yes. You could probably pick that up in my accent.
Yeah. No, I didn't notice at all.
No.
Not even a clue. But seriously, so I'm so grateful to have you here today. And I would like to start off by talking about your book, Learning Love, Building a Life That Matters and Healthy Relationships That Last. In your book, you talk about the 5 components.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if Well, if that's a great place to start, you can start there. Or if there's something else that we need to know first before we go diving into the components, start there. What do I need to know about learning love?
That it is a learned skill set, that love is learned. Now, if you came from a healthy, thriving family, you learned it before you even knew you learned it. You learned it. You learned at least a portion of it growing up. You don't necessarily learn everything you need to learn, even if you came from a healthy family, but you learn enough to know basically what the basics of love. But even if you did not come from that healthy family, or if you did, but in your adult life, you find that your relationships are still off the rails, and that happened to me. I came from a very healthy family, but early in my life, I had a toxic first marriage, ended in divorce. Still have the scars from that one. It was a total mess. And so even if you came from a healthy family, you may find yourself really wondering, what is love? And how do I practice this? It is a learned skill set. And when we learn and practice the 5 components of love, you can build those healthy, happy, thriving relationships, even if you've come from a dysfunctional family or an abusive family or been through a toxic relationship or a terrible breakup or some kind of relationship trauma. Anyone can learn what love is and how to practice it in their daily life, not only in marriage relationships, romantic partnerships, but also in family, friendships, co-workers, loving what you do for a living, even loving humanity. It's all the same principles once we learn what love is.
Well, you said sort of the 3 words that have puzzled philosophers for millennia, and that is, what is love?
Yeah.
So what is love?
Love is the 5 components. It's made of 5 components. And as I said, you learn and practice these 5. You know what love is and how to practice it. And so I'm happy to run through the 5 if you like.
Sure. But I'd like to just take a step backwards and start with, so, we all say we want to love and we all say we want to be loved and all of that. But what do we mean when we say that? Because, there is this, I've long held that there are, and I know that there are many definitions of love, and I know that, for example, there are also very many types of love. Mm-hmm. Family love and romantic love and friendship love and all of that. But for me, in a different sense, I essentially think that there are ultimately 2 kinds of love. There is transactional love and there is unconditional love, right? So there is the love of, I love you because. I love you because you treat me nice. I love you because you're pretty. I love you because you have a great sense of humor. I love you because. And then there is just, I love you because you exist and are a creature on this planet and are inherently deserving of love, right? So we all say we want love and we all say that we want to love. But what do we mean when we say that?
Yeah.
What is it when I say, I want to love you or I want to love humanity? What do I mean when I say that?
I had a counseling professor that always had a phrase that he used, and I used it as the subtitle of the book. He said, no matter who you talk with, what they are looking for is a life that matters and relationships that last. Mm-hmm. And I repeated that to a friend of mine one time, and he said, well, almost. He said, people are looking for healthy relationships that last. Sometimes they last and you don't want them to. And so I adopted it just a little bit on that piece of advice. But everyone is looking for a life that matters and a healthy relationships that last. And those 2 really are 2 sides of the same coin. If you have one, you have the other. That street runs both ways. They're very well connected. Really can't separate the 2. And in order to have that, obviously, we have to have those relationships. And I totally agree with what you're saying, with the 2 kinds of love. And what I would try to add to that is whether it is the transactional, which is what we have more with co-workers and things of that nature, or the unconditional, which we hope to have with romantic partners and marriage and children and family, is practiced the same way. That the components of love still apply. And so this is a way of conceptualizing either kind of love, as you describe it there, in order to not only understand it, but practice it, know where things are going right, and know where things are going wrong. Because sometimes, especially when we did come from a healthy family growing up, we may have learned 1 or 2 or 3, 4 of the components of love without even knowing what they are. We don't conceptualize them, don't articulate them. We just sort of naturally learn them. And then we wonder what's wrong when our relationships aren't quite working right. And when we understand the 5 components of love, regardless of what kind of love we're talking about, what kind of relationship we're in, we can conceptualize it, analyze it, and see, well, it's going pretty well, and sometimes because I understand these components, but I'm missing this one or these 2 that I didn't learn from my family. And, families adapt, they get by, they learn how to function, and that becomes normal, but it doesn't mean we know everything about how to make things work. So we get into our adult relationships, whether it is at work or in friendships or in family or in marriages or romantic partnerships, and we start to wonder, why is this not quite working? Mm-hmm. When we understand the 5 components of love, we can answer that question.
Well, then, I think this sounds like a fine time to go into the 5 components, doesn't it?
Sounds good to me.
So what are the 5 components of love?
The first one usually catches people by surprise. The first one is grief. And when we say the word love, we usually immediately start thinking we're going to talk about bubblegum and butterflies, everything sweet and beautiful. And we get to that. I don't want to deny that at all. That is an important part of particularly romantic love. But no one gets through this life without scars. Mm-hmm. Everyone is going to experience hardship. And every relationship, regardless of where that relationship is, whether it's at work or at home or any other place, it's going to have bumps in the road. There's going to be hardships in life. And what happens, especially as we're growing up, we start getting into our teenage years, we get hurt. Everyone does. It's always hard. And we start putting up walls. We put up barriers. We keep people at arm's length. We protect ourselves. We start thinking things like, no one's going to hurt me like that anymore. And we push people out of our lives, and we do it very often at a young age, not even realizing we're doing it. And then we wonder, why aren't people connecting with me? Why do people seem to stay so distant? Why am I not able to have these deep friendships? And why are my spouse and I not able to communicate with each other? Why are we missing this? We've put up these barriers, push people out of our lives, try not to get hurt. And all it does is hurt us and damage the relationships in our lives or keep us from forming the relationships that we really want. If we learn how to grieve, we learn that grief process, and we learn how to go through that during the hurts of life, that's our comeback story. When we get hurt along the way, and we will, we can come back from that because grief is a healer. Doesn't mean it's fun. It's a difficult thing to go through, but it's a healing process. And as we heal from those hurts, we are able to stay in connection. We're able to retain that ability to connect with people and stay engaged and not live in fear of being hurt. Now, that doesn't mean that whatever happened to us just goes away. It doesn't mean that we belittle or ignore abuse or toxic behavior on somebody's part or some terrible tragedy that happened. We don't ignore that. But the way I describe it is some things in life are so painful, they leave a hole in your heart. But you can live a really good life with a hole in your heart. And that's what grief teaches us to do. It doesn't go away. The scars will always be there, but we learn to stay engaged in life, enjoy life, and have those fulfilling relationships because we know how to live a really good life with a hole in our heart. And that takes learned skill. And the skill is grief. When we have that one, we can come back. We can come back from whatever happens in life and keep those relationships without living in fear of being hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. You said an interesting sentence that I jotted down. You said that grief is a healer.
Yeah.
We don't normally think of grief as a healer. We think of grief as something that tears us down, something that makes us sad. And how is grief a healer?
It does make us sad, but in the midst of that emotional struggle that we go through, it is a healing process. Emotions heal. It takes time. It is a struggle. It's not fun. It is painful. But there is a healing process at the end of it as we get through that grief process. Again, it doesn't mean we set aside the struggle or the pain that happened. We may always live with those scars, but we learn how to live with them in a healthy way. It's just really a misunderstanding of grief to think we need to just pick ourselves up by our bootstraps and lean into the wind and grit our teeth. That works for a little while. It looks good. People brag on us of how tough we are, how strong we are, how well adapted we are. But that wears you down. That takes so much energy, and no one can carry that forever. It will eventually tear you down. And so grief is that healing process where we can really just lay that burden down, where we can be able to breathe again. We can really stay connected in life and really enjoy life because we've gone through that grief process.
Yeah. As you're talking, I'm thinking of that cliche, and you'll forgive me, that, bones are strongest at where they broke, right? Healed bones are stronger at the break point. And that your heart is stronger after healing from the grief.
Yeah. When we come back, we gain a confidence. We have a strength that we didn't have before. Yeah. Now, again, it's not fun. I don't want it to make it sound like this is some great triumphant thing. It's a struggle to go through. But there is healing on the other side of it. And we are stronger and are able to stay engaged. And as I've said already, we avoid that fear then that would keep us from our relationships. And that's why this is the first component, a foundational component. It really is laying that solid foundation for relationships that even when we hit tough times, we know how to come back from them. Yeah.
I've known a fair number of people in my life who have been unable to move on from grief.
Yeah.
They just, I hesitate to use the word wallow, but they seem to wear grief like a blanket and just sort of shield themselves inside the grief. And it occurs to me as I listen to you that if they do that, they're really shutting themselves off from connection and shutting themselves off from moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've often told the story over the years of a lady I met years ago in a counseling program that I worked in. And she was in her early 70s. And she was bitter, she was angry, depressed, and long story short, she had kept everyone out of her life, had never really had good relationships. Even though she was married, even though she had children, she was estranged from them in many ways, had turbulent relationships her whole life, and it all went back to a falling out she had with her sister 50 years prior.
Oh, my God.
She had been best friends with her sister growing up. They had been inseparable. In their early 20s, they had a falling out, and she got into her mind, if I can't trust my sister, I can't trust anyone. And she put up those emotional barriers. She had relationships, but not good ones, and lived her whole life mistrusting everyone around her, always looking to see when the next shot may come.
Yeah.
Think about if she had grieved the loss of her sister in her 20s.
Yeah.
And gone through that pain, not just build up walls and barriers, but gone through the grief process to heal from that and understand, that's always going to hurt. And there's always going to be a hole in her heart because of that falling out with her sister. But she can live a really good life with a hole in her heart. What a difference that would have made over the next 50 years.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that's component number one, grief.
Yep.
What happens after that? What's number two?
The second component is emotion. That's the one that is most obvious. That's the bubblegum and butterflies. Everyone enjoys, having those emotional connections. People experience them different ways. People have different levels of emotion they're comfortable with. And that's all fine. That's personality, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some people wear their emotions on their sleeve. Some people are more reserved, more introverted. You don't have to change who you are. But we all need to show the people we care for that we care for them. We need to say it out loud. There needs to be an emotional connection there. And even for some people, this is easy. They don't have to be instructed on any of this. They don't need to hear it. They know how to share their emotions. They're great at it. But for those that are not, it's a practice. You don't have to be perfect, but learn how to say the words. And if you come from a background, particularly those that came from abusive backgrounds, love can sometimes be a loaded word. It can be a weapon. And it may be hard to say things like, I love you, because that brings up so much turmoil related to that word. Okay. Then say things like, I appreciate you. Say things like, thank you, when somebody does something nice for you. Learn what works for you in your situation, in your relationship. But whatever that means, make sure there's an emotional connection there. The people that you care for shouldn't just have to assume it. They need to know it, because you tell them and you show them and connect with them emotionally. And when we do that, it carries us through a lot of stuff. Just knowing people truly care. And never having to question that, even in difficult times, that we say those words to each other. And like I said, that can be adapted to our own situation, our own relationships, and our own background, and our own personality. There's no script to it, but practice it.
Yeah.
Practice showing emotion.
Yeah. Because some people, frankly, feel emotions very deeply and don't ever say it.
Exactly.
Or love their partners or their children or their friends very deeply and never tell them, which is sad. I tell everybody maybe too much. I'm always going around.
I don't know if there's too much. I don't know if that's possible.
But for those people for whom this is not a natural thing, for the people who have to practice doing it, who have to learn to say things like thank you and I appreciate you and all of that. Where does the inability to create these connections come from? Where does the inability to show emotion come from? Is this coming from fear, or is this coming from just lack of knowledge, not knowing that it's necessary? Where do you think it mostly comes from?
It can be all of the above. I think we can refer back to our previous conversation about grief, that if we've been hurt and not grieved through that we're putting up those walls and barriers, as we discussed earlier. It can be from just a lack of example. If we grew up in a family that just didn't say those things, that love was just supposed to be assumed, and we didn't ever hear that expressed to us, then, that can be just a lack of knowledge. It's just not something we even think about doing. That's just the way I was raised. And that's what we refer back to so often, is that's just the way I was raised. You can respect your family, love your family, appreciate your family, and not mimic your family. You can do something different. And many people have to learn to express emotions in a different way than their family did. And sometimes it's because emotions were expressed badly, that our idea of emotional people are those that fly off the handle, say, terrible things, have no filters, and we start equating that to emotional people, and we don't want to do that, so we do the opposite. We shut it down. We don't say things. We over-filter ourselves. So it can come from a lot of places, and that's why I say it's a practice. Yeah. You don't have to be perfect. Just practice it. Just try, to experiment with it. See what feels right, and like every other practice, you get better. You
Right.
you may not be great today at showing emotions and telling someone you love them or telling someone you appreciate them. That may feel just horribly awkward. That's all
Yeah.
right. It's like every other skill set. You get better as you go. Everything's awkward the first time you try it. Your brain literally has to create new neural connections to learn to do anything. So the first
Right.
time you cook anything, it's awkward. The first time you try to shoot a basketball, it's awkward. Everything's awkward the first time. And so don't get caught up in that. Just practice it.
Yeah.
You'll get better.
Yeah. Do you find that this is particularly difficult for men more so than women because men are really taught don't be emotional? Men are taught that expressing emotion is weakness.
Yeah, I think so, particularly if you've come from a very traditional background. We kind of live in an era where a lot of these things are changing for men and women. So it's not as easy to delineate as I think it used to be. But particularly if you came from a traditional background, yeah, men were taught, or little boys are taught, boys don't cry, don't show emotion. And if you did say something nice on the playground as a kid, as a boy, sometimes you got made fun of.
Right.
And so, we bottle all that stuff up and learn to be more manly. And I'm not trying to shoot down manly. It's fine to be masculine, but
Right.
it is still masculine to say, I appreciate you. I see what you did there and I really like it. I like when you do that. Or to say, I love you. There is nothing there's nothing unmasculine about saying I love you. And so again, it can just be a practice that we have to get used to because we were trained in a different way. We don't have to radically change our personality. We just learn a new skill.
Yeah. And for me, honestly, masculinity means, and this is an entirely separate conversation for another time, because I don't really believe in binaries like masculine and feminine and things like that. Yeah. I believe that we all exist on a continuum, and really we should just be focused on being the best humans we can and not being the best at a gender. But when it comes to masculinity, I think one of the most masculine things you can be is honest. And if the honest expression of yourself is, I love you and I appreciate you, then just express that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that's exceptionally well put. And what could be more human and masculine and feminine, for that matter, of authenticity, of just being honest in what you think and what you believe. And we do that so easily when it's negative.
Yeah.
If we don't like something, well, it's easy to tell someone that. But for some reason, we're hesitant when we find something that we really do cherish about someone. And as you said, we could go off on a tangent on that one. There's a lot of reasons for that. But that makes no sense, And one of the things I often say to people when we get caught up in these trends and these traditions of, well, we'll criticize someone, but don't want to compliment them too much. We'll say when we're angry, but we don't want to say, when we really feel depths of love for them. Who made that rule?
Right.
That we can say negative things but not positive things, that we're sometimes supposed to hold those back. I don't know who made that rule, and if we don't know who made it and why it exists, why are we following it?
Yeah, right. So we've got grief, we've got emotion.
Yep.
What's number 3?
3 is practicality. And for those that
I did not see that coming.
For those that struggle a little bit with the emotional side, that have to practice that, they usually like the practicality side. This is how we live together. You may have heard someone say, I love them, but I can't live with them. Well, that means they've got an emotional connection, but they don't have the component of practicality. These are things like communication skills, and that is a skill. It's something we have to learn. Things like dealing with money situations in a partnership, maybe at work, but particularly in a marriage or a romantic partnership where you live together, making financial decisions together, learning how to do that with one another. And there's no script to that. People handle money different ways, but learning to do that together. Dealing with mental health issues, things like anxiety and depression, not only affect us, but they affect our relationships. And those conditions are treatable. Those are treatable conditions. And so it becomes a practical matter of getting the help we need, the treatment we need to deal with the things that affect us and affect our relationships. I often say that emotion brings us together, practicality keeps us together. It's the way we live together. This is an important component of love that many people kind of miss out on because, they don't make romantic comedies about the sensible guy that makes good decisions. And so we sort of grow up thinking, well, love is all about the emotion and about the emotional connection. It is, but it's also about how we live together in a practical way. What decisions do we make? How do we go about living together? How do we treat one another? And how do we take care of ourselves and those around us so that we have a practical way of living that works?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, it's Ator again. Sorry to interrupt the show, but I want to tell you about something I'm really excited about. If you've been listening for a while, you know how important it is to take time for self-reflection and growth. That's exactly why I've created the Ink and Authenticity Men's Creative Writing Workshop. This is a 6-session online workshop designed specifically for men. Whether you're looking to explore your identity, challenge societal expectations, or simply find a creative outlet to process your life, this workshop gives you the space to do that. It's not about being a professional writer. It's about telling your story, digging deep, and connecting with others on the same journey. Each session is filled with prompts and discussions that will help you understand yourself better, all in a supportive and open environment. So if you want a way to write, reflect, and share, join me for Ink and Authenticity. Just visit authenticityroad.online/workshop to learn more and register. Now let's get back to the show. Yeah. As you're talking about this, I'm thinking about relationships that are impractical. Thinking about relationships where either they're toxic or they're long distance or these two people just for whatever reason cannot be together. And what that does to love. And you brought up mental illness and this really sort of brings up sadness for me at the notion of being in love with someone who is struggling with a mental illness. Do we sometimes have to say, I have to let this love go because it's just not practical?
Yes. An important component, an important aspect of the component of practicality is that some relationships have to end. And I write about this quite a bit in my book because it surprises people to have a relationship coach say some relationships have to end. They just assume that every relationship coach has this idealism that every relationship can flourish. Theoretically, yes, if you're following the 5 components of love and live these out, yes, that's possible. But no one should live being abused. Mm-hmm. If you're in an abusive relationship, get help. Sure, give it every chance. There are good stories where those relationships were mended and went on to a healthy relationship. So get the help you need. But when you come to a place that this is not changing and you are living in an abusive relationship, that relationship needs to end. That is just a practical reality. Now, can you still have an emotional connection? So that going to hurt? Yes. That's why we get back to grief. Mm-hmm. In order to be able to still connect with other people, other family members, friends, and maybe another relationship later on. But the practical reality is some people do come from a background of abuse, and that's what they learned, and now that's what they're carrying out. We don't necessarily have to hate that person or condemn that person because they were probably abused too, but that doesn't mean we can live with them. Right. There are boundaries that need to be set. There are some lines that do not get crossed. And even in the name of love, even when we feel an emotional connection, a practical reality is abuse is just not allowed. We do not live in those situations. And yes, sometimes we have to say the practical reality of this situation is I have to end this relationship.
Yeah. That's sobering, but freeing.
Well, it is. And I've been down that road. I mentioned earlier, I was in a toxic relationship early in my life. Didn't understand a lot back then and got into a bad relationship. And it was extraordinarily painful. But I learned from that. And I learned that yes, that was the right decision to end that relationship. And I did go through a terrible grief process. And that's one of the reasons I understand now that grief is part of the healing process and part of the process of love, because now I'm remarried. I have a wonderful relationship with my wife, Heather. I like to say I've had a bad marriage and a good marriage, and good is better. And we need to work for that.
Definitely.
I recommend that to everyone, and that's why I wrote the book, because I think everyone should have that.
5 stars, highly recommend. Okay. I mean, I can't speak for everyone. I know that I have my story, this narrative that I tell myself about the love who got away, about the one who got away because it just wasn't practical. Yeah. Because we were just there were just too many factors against us. To this day, I still have a very soft spot in my heart.
Sure.
For that person. Yeah. But I know that it never would have worked long term. So this goes to the subtitle of your book, healthy relationships that last. Yeah. It could have been healthy and not lasted. It could have been lasting and not healthy, but either way, it just wasn't meant to be.
Well, and that's why I say emotion brings us together. Practicality keeps us together. And so you come together off of that emotional connection, but the practical reality means it couldn't stay together.
Yeah, no. I'm going to embroider that on a pillow. Emotions bring us together. Practicality keeps us together. Yeah. All right. So moving on from practicality, we hit number 4, which is
acceptance. And this is twofold. The first one and the easiest one is, of course, we have to accept other people. They're not going to be perfect. Even the people we love most, they're not going to be perfect, and we have to accept to a certain extent. Again, that doesn't include abuse and things of that nature. There are boundaries to be set. But within reason, of course, we have to accept others within relationships, even when they're not perfect. However, that's a minor portion of it. What it really comes down to is we have to accept ourselves. We cannot love other people until we love ourselves first. And we can't love,
brother, preach.
We can't. We can't love people more than we love ourselves. Brene Brown's done some great work. I always reference her here because she's done tremendous work in this area. And she's not the only one, but she's the most known for it right now. She's done fabulous work. Right. And you can't love other people. Her research has shown that you cannot love other people more than you love yourself. That's the limit. And we live with this delusion that if I'm in relationships that love me, I'll love myself more, they'll validate me. Or I can have this self-loathing, but I can still love my spouse, my kids, my partner, my friends, my coworkers. I can love everyone else, even if I despise myself and beat myself up constantly. You cannot. That is a mistaken way of thinking, because the reason is love is not a commodity like money. If we need more money, there's ways of getting it. We can get a second job. We can take out a loan. We can steal money, which I don't recommend, but it is possible. Don't recommend that one. But there are ways of acquiring money in order to give it away or whatever. But love is not like that. It's organic. It has to be grown. It's grown within us. And so if we want to give away more love, we have to grow more love. And that means loving ourselves. So if we find ourselves in a position where we know we're self-critical, we're self-loathing, we beat ourselves up all the time, but we live with this idea, well, I can love other people. No, you can't. And if you wonder, well, we have this emotional connection and we do all the practical things right. We get along well. And, we've been through tough times, but we've grieved through that. But why is it that we're not really working? This is a really common one, that people look so much at all the other things and they don't look at themselves and understand the prerequisite for loving someone else is to love yourself. And that is the extent to which you'll be able to love someone. So if you want to love your spouse or your partner more, you want to love your kids more, you want to show more love to your friends, your coworkers, to humanity, to the planet, to God, whatever, love yourself.
This is a topic very near and dear to my heart, because this was a revelation for me. I had always heard that cliche, you can't love anybody else until you love yourself. Yep. And I used to call bullshit on that. I used to say,
a lot of people do.
That's not true, because I know that I love so-and-so and I don't really love myself all that much.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I really started loving myself that I moved from transactional to unconditional.
Yeah.
It was when I was able to love myself and accept myself that I was able to begin to see the lovability of every creature on the planet.
Yeah.
And I think part of this goes to, and it's appropriate that this is in the acceptance stage. Part of this goes to our feelings of enoughness, of being enough, and I am enough. And that many of us, I would argue virtually everyone that I've met, starts from a place of, at least when I meet them, starts from a place of I am not enough.
Yeah.
And it's not until we do our work that we begin to move past that and realize that we are enough. But that notion of, and this is how it goes to transactional love, is that I need external validation because I can't validate myself.
Right.
And so I need you to tell me that you love me, because you need to tell me that my traits make me lovable so that I can accept external validation from you, rather than me validating myself and then broadcasting that love outward. There's a lot of ego in that as well. It's like,
sure,
I love you because you're special. And that strokes your ego to hear you're special. I love hearing I'm special. And so I love you when you say that I'm special. And when we move past that into self-validation, we don't need to hear that you're special anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but
No,
this just all flows so perfectly into acceptance and how this meshes with my understanding of love.
It is. It's so important. And that's why I started out by saying love is a learned skill set. Because one of the reasons that we do grow up with this idea we're not enough is because out of actual need in life, we grow up being told, you got to learn this, you need to learn this set, you got to grow up. What are you going to do when you grow up? What are you going to do for a living? How are you going to, pay your rent? When are you going to move out? And we don't always say it like that, but There's this idea that in order to live, you have to hit these benchmarks. And a lot of people grow up with this idea, I've got to get a certain level of education. I've got to get a good job. Then I got to get the promotion. I've got to get married. I've got to have kids. I've got to have the house. I've got to have not just a kid, but 2.3 children, because that's what's required. And, whatever it is, whatever our tradition is growing up, we have to hit those benchmarks. And okay, so it's fine to be trained up to say, sure, we have to earn a living. That is a practical reality. So there's nothing wrong with any of that. But what we miss is saying those are just things of practical reality of life. It doesn't validate who you are. Mm-hmm. That's what you do. And so often we start to equate what we do with who we are, and those are two very different things. Mm-hmm. And love is about who we are. Not just hitting benchmarks in life, not just accomplishing, not just getting the promotion or checking off a list of successes. Those things are fine, and they're fun. They can be, and they can make life enjoyable. But who we are is a different discussion entirely.
Yeah.
And what we are is worthy of love, just in our humanity, just in who we are. And the reason I say that, and I'll be quick here. I could go a long time on this one. But how did we get here? We got here, basically everybody agrees, we got here one of two ways. Either we were created by an all-powerful God, or we evolved over billions and billions of years through random actions to not only exist, but exist as people with the capability, the consciousness of love. Either way, that's a pretty fabulous origin story.
Right.
Now, we argue back and forth over which one we agree on, but if we just step back from that argument for a minute and say, okay, we disagree sometimes on which origin story is ours, and some people try to merge the two together, of course, but whatever origin story you hold to, that's pretty fabulous. And that makes us, either way, inherently, whichever direction you start, I'm going to argue whether you come to me and say, I believe I was created by an all-powerful, loving God, or I was created out of this billions of random events through millennia to be who I am. Either way, that's very special, that you are worthy of being appreciated, regardless of what you're going to argue or where you're going to argue you came from. I'm going to argue that's a great story, and you're worthy of love.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I love that notion. I love how you put it. That either way, it's a great origin story. I like Neil deGrasse Tyson's take on it. Is, you are made of stardust.
Yeah.
You are made of the stuff of life itself. So, be proud.
Absolutely.
Wow. I feel like I need a walk around break after that one. Okay. I feel like I need to just go get some fresh air. All right. So we started with grief. We moved to emotion. We moved to practicality. We've landed in acceptance. What happens next?
Passion. We need a passion for life. Now, when you say the word passion in the context of love, people often jump to the idea of intimacy and romantic relationships. That's certainly part of it, but it's more of a passion for life, of enjoying the life you have, of living the adventure of life. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, there's going to be good times and bad times, and getting out of bed in the morning excited to see what the day brings. Loving what you do for a living, enjoying your family, living life with a passion. That becomes the fuel in our engine, becomes the wind in our sails. And again, a lot of folks, they do these other components pretty well, and then they wonder, what's happening in our relationship? Why is this? Very often we've gotten into the job and the homework and the chores around the house and keeping the lawn mowed and all these things, and we've forgotten just to have fun. Fun is a vital part of life and love. And when we enjoy life, we have fun, it brings passion into our life, and we enjoy that family that we have. We love being with them. We love going to work because we enjoy what we do and we enjoy the people we're with. Now, it's not perfect all the time. We know that. And people will sometimes push against this idea of passion and fun and enjoyment because they say, well, life is serious. Yes, it is. That's why we have practicality as the third component of love. And people will say, but, life is not easy. Life hurts. Life has tragedy. Yes, that's why we have grief as the first component of love. We're not forgetting those things, but let's not forget passion either. Let's not forget as much as possible. Obviously, we can't all the time, but as much as we can, let's have fun. Let's enjoy life. Enjoy the kids, enjoy the marriage, enjoy the partnership, enjoy that romance, enjoy the friends, enjoy what you do for a living, enjoy life as much as possible. And the more we can do that, the more passion we have in life, the more love we're going to experience, and all these other components become easier along the way. And so if we can grieve the tough times and come back from those difficulties and stay engaged, we have those emotional connections, we live life in a practical way, live life well together, we accept and love ourselves first in order to love others, and we keep the passion, the enjoyment, the fun of life You can build great relationships in every area of life, even if you've come from a dysfunctional family, a difficult background, been through a divorce. These are the components you can use to build the relationships you want, the ones you need, and the ones you deserve.
Right. I keep coming back as you're talking. I keep coming back to the subtitle of your book, and specifically the second half of it, and that is, healthy relationships that last. Because I think of, when I hear this passion part, keeping the fun alive, I think of these marriages, these very, very long-term marriages, where the folks were sort of put together by their parents. Or, there was sort of, this was the girl that you had to marry, or the person you were supposed to marry or whatever. And how those marriages can last, forever. Those marriages can last 50 years or 60 years or whatever, but completely passionless and completely devoid of fun. And so they're relationships that last, but are they healthy?
Yeah. We see this a lot. This struggle hits very often. I'm stereotyping a bit here, but, in the 30s, 40s, because there is that checklist I talked about earlier that you've got to get your education, you've got to get the job, you need to get the promotion, you need to get married, you need to have kids, you need to buy the nice house. All these checklist things that we have, very often people in their teens, their 20s are working very hard to check these off the list. And they find a person that they connect with emotionally. They find a person that meets enough of the practical realities of life. They can make this work, and they're checking these things off the list together. And that you can ride that wave for a while. And then you get in your 30s, and you've got the job, and you've got the house, and you've got the kids, and you've been married for a while, and you think, what now? There's no more checklist. I've done everything. And then you can try to get another promotion. There's always things in life, but I've checked the list off. Is this it? And we see a lot of 30-somethings, 40-somethings struggling in their relationships of like, all right, we've built this together, but why? And what do we do with it now? And that doesn't mean you don't appreciate it. Doesn't mean you don't love your kids or love your job or whatever. It just means that you don't know exactly why you did all that. Right. It's just we did. And the reason we did that we didn't talk about to begin with is to have fun, right, to enjoy it. Yeah. To just enjoy having those kids and enjoy having the job and enjoy having that house. That's the reason. But because we don't say that, because it becomes this checklist of successes that we're supposed to have, and we never say why, we get to wondering what that is and what the next thing is we're supposed to do. We're just supposed to enjoy it, to let that be the passion of our life and truly enjoy this family we've built and the home we've built and the job we've built. And of course, there's adjustments that need to be made along the way and new things we learn, but we do all that to enjoy life. Right. So enjoy it.
Yeah. And you and your wife, Heather, are certainly living that ideal as you house sit and pet sit your way around the country.
That's our philosophy. We look to have the adventure, to have fun, enjoy life. We raised the kids, and that was wonderful, and it was difficult. It's always a measure of both, raising kids, and we've done all the stuff of life, but they're off on their own doing well, and we ended up in these remote jobs. We didn't necessarily set out to do that, but that's the way it ended up. And once it did, hey, that opens a lot of doors. Not everybody has that opportunity where you can just travel around and keep pets and stay in nice houses. But there's other opportunities.
Right.
What does your life hold that you can just enjoy your life? Just have fun. Fun should be a priority, just like all the others. And that's one of the things that I always want people to know. All five are necessary. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we treat passion and enjoyment and fun as if it's good if you can get it, but it's not really necessary. No, it's necessary. Or all these other things begin to fall into struggle. Why are we doing all these practical things? Is it just to check it off the list? No, it's to enjoy life. Why am I practicing showing emotion if that doesn't come natural to me? Why am I going to all the effort of saying those words that I find awkward? It's so that we can really enjoy our relationship and have those sweet moments that really do make a difference in life. It's all about enjoyment. And so let's not forget that aspect, that component. All 5 are necessary.
Yeah. So we've covered the 5 components of love. Is there anything that's left out here about building a life that matters and healthy relationships that last? Is there anything else we need to know about attaining that or about learning love?
Well, I've kind of referred to it a few times, but I should say distinctly, it is a practice. Mm-hmm. That it is a practice, and you're not going to be perfect. I don't want anyone to walk away thinking I have somehow mastered this in my own relationships. I have a wonderful relationship with my wife, but we struggle too sometimes. We have to work at it. Everybody does. Right. It is a practice. No one graduates from the school of love. You don't arrive someday on the mountaintop of love and say, I did it. It is a practice. And you're never going to get perfect at it. And yes, I teach it and I understand it, but I have to practice it.
Right.
And I'm not perfect at it either. None of us are. And it's okay not to be perfect. What's not okay is to give up on it.
Yeah.
As long as we're identifying the areas that we're missing, the areas that we struggle, we look at what those are, and we practice those. You don't have to be perfect, but let's keep getting better. The other thing that I would say is really important in all this, you may have heard me say one of these components and think, I don't even know where to start. Yeah, you gave a little, and of course I go much more in depth in the book, but people can look at certain aspects and think, I don't even, especially with things like grief or with things like the practicality side of like mental illness and things like that. They think, I don't even know what to do. Get help. There is help available. Everyone, and I make this argument in the book, everyone should be in counseling. Everyone. There's no exceptions to that as far as I'm concerned. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be in counseling every week, but you see a doctor for your physical health. You see a dentist for your teeth. You go to a mechanic to fix your car, get your oil changed, perhaps. Some people do that on their own. A lot of people take it to an oil changing place. We do these things. We get professionals to help us so we can live a better life, a healthier life, more productive life. Our emotional life, our mental health is no different. We need professional people. Find a counselor, find a therapist, get a life coach, someone that can help you in these areas that you're struggling. No one should do this alone. Everyone needs to find the help they need, just like you would go to a doctor or a dentist. Now, some people will immediately say, well, not everybody can afford counseling. Yes, but not everybody can afford a dentist either. That doesn't negate the need for a dentist.
Right.
It's still a need. I recognize that some people can't. I'm not saying that there's not problems with this idea, because, yeah, there are struggles, but work to overcome the struggles as much as you can. Everyone needs help sometimes. And so it's not enough just to identify these things. Practice it, get better at it, and if it's really an area of struggle, get help.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. Well, listeners of our show know that we have 2 questions that we ask every guest. And since you are in the hot seat this week, it is your turn. Question number 1 is, what does the word authenticity mean to you?
First word that comes to mind is honesty, reality. We live life so often in a fake way. Very often our mind is racing ahead thinking, how am I going to be accepted in this situation and how do I need to act? And some people get really good at adapting to that so they can run through that series very quickly in their minds and then quickly adapt to these situations. But it really is just being real. It's being honest. And that doesn't mean we do it in a mean way. Some people take that too far and think that they can be cruel in the name of honesty. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about just being honest, being who you are, being real, because it's okay to be real. When you love yourself, you know you're worthy, then show that worthiness to the world.
Wow. Yes. Wonderful. Question number 2, which is your chance to freestyle, is what question didn't I ask you that you wish I had asked you?
Oh, that is a good one. Yeah, because you did a good job asking a lot of good questions. Wow, let's see. Yeah, you ask everything I expected you to ask. So I don't know there's anything really missing.
Well, then let me
You're good at what
rephrase
you
the
do.
question.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Let me rephrase the question. What is it that we didn't talk about that lights you up, or that you think people need to walk away with? You know, an essential takeaway that maybe we didn't hit on? Is there any of that?
I think we hit on a little bit, but I guess I should emphasize it. I think I would like to emphasize it more that while these components give you the roadmap, it is still a struggle. Don't beat yourself up. It is a struggle, and everybody struggles with it. And so start where you are. Start where you are. You don't have to look back and think, boy, I wish I'd have known this. I had someone that read my book that said, I wish I'd have known this 30 years ago. I wish that too. I wish that for them. And that's why I wish every young person could read my book and have these ideas to guide them in their life. But I wish I'd have known these things when I was young. I wish I'd have known this a long time ago too. But it's okay. You can start where you are. And love is a possibility regardless of where you're starting from. The past doesn't equal the future, as the cliche goes, but it's also true that we start right now wherever we are, whatever mess we've come out of, and everybody comes out of a mess in some capacity or another. Put these things into place. You can build a really good life for yourself.
Beautiful. And that sounds like a fine way to end the conversation. So, Dr. Mark Hicks, how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in learning more, or in engaging you for counseling, or just to touch base with you? How can people find you?
Go to my website. It's markahicks.com. M-A-R-K. My middle initial is A-H-I-C-K-S. markahicks.com. And you'll find everything there. There's a contact page that you can contact me if you want me as a speaker for your event, do a workshop. If you're interested in relationship coaching, even ghostwriting, contact me through there. You'll find my podcast, my YouTube channel, easy links to all of that. And you'll find references to my book, but there's big news on the book front. It was previously self-published, and you could find links there. Those are now down because my book has been picked up by Morgan James Publishing, and they are in the process of republishing that. It'll take a few months to do the rollout, but soon pre-orders will be available, and it will be available in wherever books are sold. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah. So right now we are in August of 2024. So by October of 24, say, or
could be a little. I think. I'm not sure yet because this is breaking news, so they haven't given me the full rundown of the time frame. But I think pre-order should be around that time. Yeah.
Okay.
And it should be in wherever you buy books. Should be available. I'm hoping early next year. I'll get more information, and I will keep people up to date on my website of exactly what that time frame is once I know that.
Super. So if you are listening to this podcast sometime toward the end of 2024 or into 2025, you should be able to pick up the book immediately. If not, get your pre-orders in. It's really worthwhile. And Mark, I just loved having you here today. This has been so amazing and fun and enlightening and delightful, and you're just so charming and sweet. And I can't thank you enough for having been here and taking the time out of your busy schedule to join me today.
It's truly my pleasure. I've had a great time. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to throw the bags back into the jalopy and head back out onto the Authenticity Road. So on behalf of the show, I am Ator, and until we meet again, please be authentic. Goodbye, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope what you've heard will help you on the road to your personal authenticity.
Visit us at www.authenticityroad.online.